The trick was always to say, trust your instincts, put them into play, put them into practice. And then a bit of a rock theory of like, then fuck it up. What do you learn by doing something that doesn't work? Can you use it?
Hi, this is the Free Art School where we talk about lessons you learn the hard way living as an artist, both practical and meaningful things. And I cannot tell you how excited I am today to be talking to Kevin Radley, artist, also educator. Some may say the art father from his large lineage of students, devoted students. Anyway, I wanted to say welcome to Kevin.
I thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm a little bit nervous about that title, but we can roll
Oh
on.
my gosh, yeah. Okay, so I wanted to say I put a little call on Instagram. I don't know this guy, but Eli Thorne said, "Thank you for being supportive of adventures and wild art to follow our instincts." And then I Cynthia Leong said, "You raised us all." And Stacy Switzer said that you were like a father figure when her own family was going through a hard time. And then I got so many like just grateful, loving messages from former students like Jay Chung, Nato Thompson. I mean, I talked to Nato about you on the phone for 45
Fantastic.
minutes.
He's
Uh,
so cool.
Aaron Gatch, Taryn Pay,
Oh
Tamarind.
my God. Taryn Pay.
Taryn Pay said something very loving. And I tried to get in touch with Shauna Moulton. Keith Bodie said something loving. Um,
Oh my goodness.
but yeah, I talked to Nato on the phone for like 45 minutes about you. And he remembered direct quotes from like 28 years ago.
Yeah. He said so. Well, he said one of the things that was a very interesting thing. I just sort of say something. I never thought of anybody as students. I put that to rest right immediately, just because in art practice, it's not no, you're doing, you know. And it was really important to lay down and think that you're not here as students, or you can use that word, but I don't want to put it in a box. So that in some ways that became the essence of what became the thing of the Kitty Club.
Oh, I should say maybe the basics. You were a faculty member at UC Berkeley from
Yes.
1995 to 2000,
3 to 09.
and your classes were called,
They started out all kinds of titles.
oh,
They had, temporal structures, which I often got architecture students, which they left in 15 minutes. Um, just because, when we're going to build temporary buildings, well, we will through words, but I don't think in actions. But so and then it became new genres, which was sort of like a catch-all phrase at that time, more specifically a actual discipline now. And so, but to me, it was about creating time-based artworks using a variety of medium and a variety of platforms to work from, not homework, but in fact, a way to look at something and then ways for you to interpret them. Here's consider those things. And to tie in with NATO during the autobiographical section, students did the critiques. I mean, I talked a lot, almost too much, but students were pretty much the influencers. They're the ones I always told them, don't tell me you like it and don't like it. Tell me what's your thinking. Tell me where you're going. How does this affect you? So it's subjective and objective at the same time. And NATO said something during a critique. He said, can I ask this question? Is the autobiographical epidermal? I just like left my chair. That's such a remarkable question. I mean, you guys were loaded with all the intelligence. You just found platforms of which to talk about it freely. And that question stuck me. There was another one, but I won't go into that one.
Well, I forgot a couple of students, Sam Yates and Adam Driggs,
Oh my God.
who loved you. I think I should say lay groundwork that you taught these classes that met twice a week. And at the end of the semester, you would have like an event off campus where people would do time-based performance art.
Right.
And I went to one of my friends was participated in, it was called the Kitty Club. And I went to David
Yes.
Rudolph performing in the Kitty Club. And something in my head clicked, like I knew that was what I wanted to do with my life, even though it
Right.
was
So
not
I
sure what
think
that
that was
meant.
the one that David was in a onesie
Maybe a red
off
onesie.
of Camp downtown Oakland.
Think I own that onesie actually, Sam.
It was
But
remarkable. Yeah, it was.
the thing I wanted to say is that you drew students to you and created a community, like both in the class directly, created like a fertile, supportive environment for people to experiment and do, like
Yeah,
really grow as artists and
for sure.
individuals. But you drew students from all over the university to you, and even ones that weren't actively in your class that they talked to you directly so much. It created a
Yeah.
whole community environment around you. And then I remember visiting you many years later, and you said that it was also like a period of time, like a special, particular period of time.
It is a particular period of time because in some degree, okay, I'll go back to a beginning. There's always these beginnings. And so for me, the beginning, one of the essence is that I carried what I learned as a preschool teacher into my college classroom.
Yes.
Because the thing about children at that age is they intentionally, innately socialize. They intentionally investigate and discover. And they intentionally sort of teach each other and converse with one another. And the ideas flow back. It's amazing. I was like stunned as a
Like
preschool teacher.
4-year olds.
4-year-olds. And my crew was 2.5 to 4, and then 4.5 to 4 to 5.5. And I worked both areas. Um, I mean, the best part was juice because we would sit at a little table and I'd have to sit in this tiny chair. And they have to measure out apple juice and eat Triscuits. But it was like the Last Supper. I mean, these guys were all talking about stuff all the time. And one of the things we learned right away was a woman named Barbara Shields, who used to be was an artist from Berkeley. She ran a program and she hired artists as opposed to people from the child studies program because they would just study children while we initiated play. And that is an important thing to learn. With children, you can have a building made out of bricks and they'll just knock it down. It already exists. What do they care? They're not discovering other things and break. So anyways, sort of shortly, we just, struck the sand with a block and it would innately take over and let it happen and discover new ways to measure, pour, talk, associate. When I got to Berkeley after teaching kind of time-based performance ideas, I kind of thought, you guys are in college and it's the first time you're kind of free. Because high school, all like schooling after preschool is about structure, science, sports, all those kinds of things. It's cliques form. But here in college, it was the first time you would meet a student with somebody that you were intellectually curious about. You liked the same ideas. You discussed the same things. So I took advantage of those things. I mean, I didn't take advantage of them, but I kind of wanted to foster that kind of sense of initiate play, i.e., platforms from various subject matters through the course. And you guys discover what you discover and bring it in. And because of that, when you trust people like students, they will take advantage of it. Because I ran the gallery, and the same thing would happen. I never curated a show. Most of the student-based shows, they were amazing. So the same thing happened in class. Like I put up an autobiographical piece. That's the introduction because you're the source of the work. All artists are the source of that which happens, what we see or what we engage. So, we had a series of things to talk about. What is the autobiographical? What the autobiographical suggests time. How long is time? How long is history? Is history 5 minutes ago or 30 years ago? Anyways. And
Well,
then what place did you grow up? It was a scar on your arm. And I think that's where that epidermal conversation came up. It's a scar on your arm is in fact a story. And people just began to examine all those sort of properties and put them together in a unique way. Some were so powerful. I mean, the class sat in tears because it was very moving and authentic. You know, so a young woman named Sarah, for her autobiographical piece, came in with a party dress and a triple layered cake and talked about that she has not one birthday, but two birthdays. One is her birthdays, and the other one is the birthday of the young woman who she received that woman's heart. So,
yeah.
what do you do with that? And then she reached in and pulled out a beef heart from the top of the cake.
Yikes.
Showed her scar. And people were like, oh my goodness. Anyways.
Well, I
So,
think that you created an environment where people could do some pretty raw personal thing. Granted,
yeah,
it was the 90s. And I do want to talk to you about some 90s
sure.
specific performance art. But I think when I talked to Nato Thompson about you, what kept coming up is how like supportive and loving you were as a human being, right down to the tattoo on your arm that says yes in all caps.
Yes.
Um,
Wow. You guys looked at me a lot, I guess. It's the only way I know how to do is to. Who's sitting in front of me is a very complex individual with remarkable things to tell us. We forget that, especially now. I mean, when I talk to people, it wasn't about giving them permission, but there were things that we did sometimes have to discuss because people would dig deep. When you're doing something with the body, it's a very different reaction than doing something as a painting.
yeah.
I mean, one art history thing I learned was there's a transaction between the artist, a visceral transaction between the artist or the individual and the image. You react in a certain way. It doesn't have to be shock. It can be wonder, a big curiosity. It's like, what the hell's going on? That kind of stuff. And, I think also, I mean, part of the reason my class got well known is because thankfully it got word of mouth. I didn't say, hey, come take my class. I had to I took 28. I was only supposed to take 20.
You
Well,
said students came from all over the university sometimes.
sure. Yeah, well, it was intended to mix disciplines, which is brilliant. It's a great thing. I mean, there were students from biochemistry. There was one guy who said, I came from quantum physics. Hate your class because every time I walk into the room, everything has meaning. But the big one was the rhetoric group who wanted to study and make film, but there's no film program at Berkeley. And
There's
I
not a lot of making things at
no,
Berkeley, very intellectual oriented.
yeah,
No photo department unless you were an architecture student. You could only use the dark room.
right, there you go. So I love the idea of people coming from the back of the classroom forward and going, can we do this? And I go, of course, that's what you're here for, But to talk to people was very important for me to get a better understanding and also for them to begin to flush out their ideas so they could see them. I mean, the trick was always to say, trust your instincts, put them into play, put them into practice. And then a bit of a punk rock theory of like, then fuck it up. What do you learn by doing something that doesn't work? Can you use it? Yeah. The class was not about mastery at all.
Oh yeah, I remember the term non-mastery came up a lot.
Yeah, right. That was, oh, I'll point one at you. It was the loud singer act, which was just the most amazing thing in the world.
But you something also, it was really open, but people were really worked really hard. You know,
Yeah. Well, yeah, I was shocked. I mean, people took it that seriously till the last performance at Berkeley. It's because they were ready to take on that kind of, they wanted to do this. It's that innate thing of participation and
mm,
doing it with peers. I mean, so a friend of mine one time said the greatest high school ever built was rock and roll because you sat by yourself or with your friends learning how to collaborate, learning how to teach each other how to play the song, say the words, demonstrate, knock over the amp, whatever it took. But it was kind of true, you know. I mean, schooling is like the is a great experience, but it's really important to you guys taught each other. Peer education was like key to that for me. I mean, what am I going to do? Teach a performance?
yeah.
I used to teach the most useless class in the University of California. Took pride in it. It was because, it was all about you guys. I mean, in the end, it was all about letting you folks discuss, challenge one another. Nobody got mean. No one ever, there was occasional problem here and there, but and then the kitty club thing was in fact a kind of like, what do we do at the end of the class? Have a party?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's open up the gallery and invite 150 people.
But
And
you also did them offsite and around the
yes, offsite too.
Bay.
Yeah, there was like five, they got kind of not practical, but it was really great. And when the first one was offsite, and one of the pieces, there was some remarkable pieces. One of the pieces was by Barbara Cook, I think. And she got together um, four other mothers with their daughters and sat a pile of clothes in front of them with sewing machines and just sewed with their daughters. And just the conversation as it was going on. And then they had a little bell, right? The timer went off. And one of the little girls said, "Oops, time's up." I
Wow.
got up and walked away. And people were just like enthralled by that, watching that real time action. So, and yes, and having it offsite was, a way of like, we have to do this. You have to do it right. And you need to, pay. This is a professional gesture on your part. And folks who just loved the idea of going to these things to see what their peers were doing. What were their ideas? What were they going to learn? And then, now also it was a great way to sort of say, this is our space. Welcome to it.
Do you want to talk about, you showed me that you had a class syllabus still from the last years.
Oh,
Should we look at
yeah. Yeah, the syllabus was a guide. Yeah, I mean, the syllabus, course description, I called it description because I really wasn't very good at spelling syllabus. So decided to simplify it. It was just a guide. This is what we're going to do. We're going to start with self and then explore that nature. What is self? I mean, people could tell. One guy actually gave this great lecture where he showed slides of this family moving into a brand new house. And then the story got more tainted as it went all along. And that the people got very nervous because it sounded like a terrible situation. And at the end of the piece, you said, "What makes you think I told you the truth?" Just realigns everybody again. And then language was really important. That was the next piece, kind of based on the exquisite corpse. And we listened to people like William Burroughs, listened to the beats. We showed him, this thing called the beat experience, which talked about beat culture leading into Andy Warhol and then the hippie thing.
Ginsberg was still, when I was there, he was still around doing poetry readings in the 90s.
Yeah, you know, I almost had Eldridge Cleaver come because he was selling his poetry on a bucket in Sprout Plaza, but it was not good. Hard. It was hard to do that. We listened to Tom Waits. How did people use language as an aesthetic or as a directive? Or, I mean, in some degree, that's how I got involved with performance. Was like I've pretty bad reading disabilities, so poetry places were like a godsend. It was like a book in front of me. And so, how do you use language and how do you use language in non-logical way? I mean, people are always surprised by, we get instructive language, but then there's language that breaks one's sense of logic. Comedians do that all the time. And there was one piece that somebody did where they copied one of these Jesus comic books and they read the comic book and it was the comic book was be with God. So they read the entire book in various voices. It was terrific, but they dropped the letter D. So it was come be with go. And everything was about going to be with go. And it was just perfect. And so, Tom Waits is a masterful language singers, writers. The exquisite corpse was a good way to sort of put things together. We did exercises and that. Then we went into persona, which is another form of identity, and talked about some of the most remarkable artists. Claude Cahun, who is one of the very first sort of new sexuality sort of artists in some ways. Remarkable artist, actually. Karen Finley, who did this incredible piece called Black Sheep, and she was the core of it. I remember talking about one time seeing black sheep because there's no evidence of black sheep. She didn't allow photography at all of it or recording of it. But at one point in the middle of reading it, which was an intense piece, she started talking about her body, and then the whole room was like just caught in that visceral place through this language. And then the voice of citizenry. What does it mean as an artist to be a citizen? That's the First Amendment, if you will. And not just the First Amendment to freely express oneself, but the redress of grievances, which I thought was really important, especially in the 90s, especially now. How do we answer to things and make them right? And I ask students to write their own Bill of Rights or the Constitution or Declaration of Independence and what does set you free. And that was a good launch point for people to address things like race, sexuality, the body, political rights. Wilson did this remarkable piece about race. She stood on this stool and had a noose on her neck, and the lights went out. It was a really tough piece.
Yeah.
So it's like when you treat it seriously from their perspective, and that was the Kitty Club. I mean, the Kitty Club was, in fact, a Declaration of Independence. It was a way to do a social experiment about bringing people collectively into a room and watching your generation do remarkable things. So it was fun. It was also like really hard because we started at 7:30 and stop when the last piece was done, which was
Oh,
around
the
midnight.
City Club went late. Yeah.
Yeah, but we didn't lose people. Um, Hopefully this is helpful.
Oh, this is great. I mean, I have some, well, I got another comment from NATO from our discussion
All
about
right.
how, I mean, you're talking about like embodied lessons or information or learning. And he said that to this day, you taught him the best lesson about dada that he's ever heard. He said, Kevin said, "You want to know about dada? Here's dada." And then you threw your wallet into the air and it hit the ground and exploded.
And that was 12 inches long or something. I don't know. It was a measurement. It was
Oh,
that I was like a really wonderful. A lot of things happen. I mean, it's still an effective tool, these tools. I mean, it's really interesting for me. You have to one thing we talk about art and periods. No, art is in succinct things. They are connected to one another, and those succinct things last for a very long time. It isn't just like, oh, Dada was something done in the 20s. No, it was still done. It was done in punk. It was done, it's done in language. It's done in, it's Beck, the recording artist Beck, used Dada and Fluxus ideas in making his music early on, especially. So it was,
I
you
wondered
know,
if you had thoughts about, well, it's considering those things specifically, dada, punk beats, what was going on in the 90s that people were hurting themselves? And
yeah.
do you feel at least in the 90s at UC Berkeley, there was a legacy of California conceptual art? And then I'm also had a question about the Art 8 class, which I know you didn't teach, but I wondered if you thought the way that class was structured was a legacy of Bauhaus instruction.
Oh God, I could love to answer that, but I think Art 8, which was brilliantly designed by John McNamara, gave artists, young people to be artists and explore all these avenues of what creativity does mean. What does production mean? What does results mean? And in the end, again, if you provide an avenue, if you will, of an individual to look at things through their own sense of importance, they'll do remarkable work. Sam Yates was a good example of it. I mean, yeah, he built this tower of boxes from the bottom floor at Kroger Hall to the top floor in the staircase with cardboard boxes that had one word, blah, and it said blah, 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 blah. It was such an indictment of consumerism. It was remarkable.
That class had four assignments, and one of them was appropriation and deconstruction.
There you go. I mean, yeah, John was brilliant at bringing that out, and his TAs were, I mean, it wasn't just the students, but also TAs because they also taught the class. So there's this remarkable educational wheel that was going on. And tying it to Bauhaus, well, I'll be minimum on that.
Okay, but
What
what
was that?
about why do you think there was so much self-harm in the 90s?
Well, I think it ends up, well, that's an extremely good question. Partially the 90s, the 80s, and 90s, this kind of 20-year period. The AIDS crisis was the cultural language of the time, including, and the cultural language of the time was not, frankly, was being dictated by artists. There were remarkable artists that were talking about the body and what it means, women as well as gay men or people of, other sexual orientations. And sometimes that ended up about being harmful. My body is being harmed by a virus. Body is being harmed by a cultural context. That's the thing I worry about currently with the trans community. But in a classroom environment, I had to be very cautious about that
Yeah.
because there's a lot of work that I never showed anybody because it's a controlled experiment. And again, there were a couple incidences.
Yes, I
Tell
was there. For
Yeah.
one. I was there for one.
Sorry. Yeah, the Google still exists.
Campus police were involved. No,
Yeah.
no one was
Oh,
harmed.
that
Let's
one.
just
Oh, there
say
were a few
no
of
one was
those.
harmed.
Yeah. But the cool thing about that, I won't go into the details because talking about performances, especially intense ones, you start talking about, I mean, it's out of context.
Yeah.
And, it takes you out of the moment. It becomes a sensational thing.
Yes.
And so, but yeah, there was the amazing thing, and that was involved David, somebody, a young man, who ended up being a doctor, which is
Yeah, I
really,
heard he's a surgeon.
yeah, right. Which was like, that's the other link that's really amazing to me. But, they did this really somewhat transgressive act, that nobody really saw, but
Yeah, it was under a sheet, so it was left.
under a
It
sheet.
was
Okay, we're
left.
getting closer to the description.
There was no harm. It was
No, there
yeah.
wasn't. That's what I mean. You take things out of, out of context and you're going to sensationalize it. I mean, that's what happens. We see it every day now. And, and there was even, even in Kitty Club, there was some pretty transgressive work that was being done, but it was remarkable to watch how people handled it, used it. And we
I
even
think
had the police show up once.
I think you I don't know
Pretty
if
funny.
I'm misremembering, but there was some performance you described where someone was had like the tools to cut themselves, and someone from the audience got up and
Yeah.
put their hands on them to gently stop them.
Yeah, that there was a couple pieces but I can't remember who exactly that was, but people did do that, which is really the effective thing. I mean, here we're talking about that moral cord, if you will, to prevent something. It was really a remarkable piece. And I don't even know to this day whether James Hastings did this.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did this piece that was like self-deprecating. He was self-crucifying, and people will be proactive. And, that's a remarkable thing in itself. That's that visceral transaction or intellectual transaction that happens between the action and the art and the individual, both artist and the audience. I remember when the entire group, nobody knew what was going on. And the question was, who's this singer? What are they doing? What's happening? Which was a really good way to question one's reality in some degree. Much work is like that. If you look at a lot of artwork historically, what is going on? What is this image, particularly Hellenistic sculpture? It's like, whoa, talk about performance art in marble.
Were you
Um,
talking about me being a self-appointed MC to an event that did not need an
yes.
MC?
Yeah. You were part of it. The other thing is that there was a crew. You yourself, Stacy, a couple of, I remember you guys did this reading of Tupac Shakur or something. It's
Oh,
really,
there was an article about it was like a hip hop. I have
yes,
it somewhere. It was a hip hop article, and I turned it into a reading group where
right.
like a reading of a play.
But it made so much sense. Here it was. You took one form idea of poetry reading and turned it into this wonderful experience about each stanza was an individual, and it was remarkable that way. Um, Yeah, that was the seriousness of what people could do, even though it was either humorous or thought-provoking. I remember one time I got a letter from the university say, can you please explain why you're giving everybody in the class an A? And I responded back, take the class and you'll find out. I mean, I'm not going to count out. I mean, by the way, I do give A pluses. How about that?
Wow.
I mean, if you got a C in my class, it means you showed up, right? That
Yeah.
never happened, really.
I think every once in a while somebody part
Oh, there were,
didn't give their
yeah,
best.
there were a few. Um, and there were moments where I had to take the reins on certain situations because it's critical as the leader of the group or the lead instructor providing this information or opportunities. You cannot do certain things in my presence on that watch. And I had two or three people that just a couple over the 20 years or so,
Yeah.
near 20 years. It's I pulled them aside and had weekly meetings rather than class with them because they broke the code. And it was important to sort of handle it because the safety of the individual was always an important thing. So it goes back to that notion of like, you know, I never talked about the Viennese actionist, Otto Mule, I'd love to talk about Marina Abramovich, but that was pretty intense work, and to mimic that would be really a bad idea.
Yeah,
That's
at that age. Yeah.
yeah. And so back to the question, all right, there was one of the very first performance groups I taught at Berkeley. Someone started to self-harm and I stopped it. There's no bloodletting in the class. No, you can't. There's so many layers that you're violating because of that. It's actually not a freedom of expression class, really. You can't just do what you want because you want to.
Yeah.
There's got to be good reasons, like any other good intellectual support, academic support, artistic endeavor, you know.
I don't know if you know how rare concepts of like support and leadership are. I just want to say express gratitude to yours.
Uh, there was a moment that I realized this was what I was gonna do.
Yeah, it was what's your family background in terms of awareness of the arts and how did you find your way to it?
Nobody knew what I did. My parents never knew what I did. I was the first, right? So the first one kind of leads the way, and nobody knows what the hell they're doing. And besides, I moved West Coast, to escape the East Coast for a variety of reasons. Well, my mom was like, could have been an artist if she had the right opportunities. And I think that played in part of like me growing up or me becoming an educator. So my family had no real sense of what I did. They thought I was going to open a hardware store and sell art furniture or something. I don't know. It was, yeah.
You said you did played music when you
I
were
did play music to a point, and then there was something that happened in the music scene that I was very influenced by rock and roll when I was a kid, and played in some pretty good bands those days, doing kind of British rave up Yardbirds kind of things. But when the drug culture premiered itself, I just kind of couldn't go anywhere with that. Drugs are a really interesting thing that I learned a lot. But uh, when the learning stopped, I stopped doing them, and art became this vehicle where I could learn more things. Actually, as a child, I went to the beginning of beginnings.
Oh wow.
As a child, I remember, laying on the grass and sort of looking at the world and realizing it was bigger than me. And that, in some ways, that message sort of circulated through. in my life. Just by my generation, that the world is a bigger place, that there's so many things that are remarkable that go on with it. And then art became when I took my first sculpture class and we had an exhibition. I was like amazed. All I wanted to do was help everybody get their pieces up and light them and all that sort of stuff. So,
You were telling me a little about on the phone about doing projects when you get somebody else involved. You threw out the example of getting someone to do a brass engraving and how
oh,
when you interact with others, you learn about a whole other world. And I thought that was amazing you approach it that way, like open and curious.
yeah. Art, the art doesn't just exist in the studio. As you know, when you reach out and work with other people, and it doesn't have to be artists. I worked with this engraver for a series of pieces, and he charged me nothing, and very little, like very little, the price of materials. And I said, "Well, why do you do that, man? You're not making any money out because you keep coming back." So, but I also learned about who he was as a veteran of Vietnam. We got into those kinds of exchanges and stories. And that embraced the pieces in many ways, making that kind of commentary, reaching out and working with other folks who helped you get to where you wanted to be as an expression, art idea, whatever. I mean, and again, that was an extension of like even a class because you learned about what other people do. I mean, right now, and my new learning experience is like I pick up hitchhikers now.
Oh gosh.
I pick up this guy. He's like his name is Greg or something. He's a Vietnam War veteran. He's got a big old mustache and stuff, and he sits there and he kind of waits at the bus stop with his pit bull, very large pit bull named Sarge. He's a Vietnam War veteran, and I pick him up every once in a while and take him where he's going. You learn all these stories about who these people. There's a guy named Ernie who lives in just outside of Mendocino, and he has this shuffling way of walking. He's like a very old guy, and his hair's all kind of falling out and stuff. And so I passed him once, and I said, "Okay, next time I see him, I'll do that." I picked him up, and his name was Ernie, I think, and um, I asked him where he was going, and he said, "I'm going to Safeway to get some food." Oh, dude, Safeway's 10 miles away, and you're going to walk there? So it's sort of you learn this thing about people who are always on the move. People are constantly moving, especially around here. There's like people on walking everywhere. Just
You're in the country.
yeah, pretty much. It just outside of Fort Bragg, but the whole coastline is, I mean, there's a reason it's called the Lost Coast.
Oh, you're in the Lost Coast?
Yeah, it's sort of like there's folks who've been here forever, ever, and it's the only thing they know. And sometimes you end up picking them up and you find out how unique they were and where they've been. And one guy started in Bangor, Maine, and ended up in Mendocino on the West Coast, walking up and down the highway. So it's always like that. I think there was a question about what inspires you.
Yeah, what keeps you going?
Yeah, and it's those kinds of things. But
Curiosity.
frankly, this experience is like very new to me and very like I
Oh,
don't,
our Zoom convo. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's sort of I don't shine my buttons much. Nobody knew that I did what I did. I didn't really go, yeah, I was a professor at UC Berkeley. It didn't, who cares?
Well, I wonder, since you were basically like a mentor isn't like enough of a word for it, but to so many people. So I'm curious if you had any mentors along your
Yes,
way.
John Winnett, who's I met in 80s, 90s. Uh, he and Margaret Crane did it. there was a period of work that was text image. So they would write, John would take photographs. One of the things I learned from John, well, John was always like, he also became director of Southern Exposure Gallery, which that's one more thing I'd like to talk to people about.
Oh yeah.
Is the Southern Exposure was a nonprofit gallery with a platform for newer artists to show their work. And John became director. And immediately in the interview, he said, well, I got a great tie-in with CalArts. CalArts is the culture producer, production factory of America. I went, well, this is interesting. And he also, we're still very close. Yeah, he was a guy who kind of believed what I was doing and promoted it. And he also had really good vision, and we worked often together on a domestic violence campaign, which I was a model for the guy who was the abuser.
Oh, you're the bad guy? No way.
I was the bad. Yeah, I couldn't go into Marin for a long time.
God.
So I was on a bus stop. He's the abuser.
Oh
He's,
no.
and I was like,
Oh
John
no.
had this remarkable way of like I would sit there in the studio and then he had the camera and his assistant operated the camera. And when he wanted a shot, he would flinch his foot next to hers. And then she would take the shot. He
Oh,
didn't, oh yeah, hold his shot. He didn't want that. He was notorious at taking pictures without looking at things. And it ended up they did this baseball card thing where they had, instead of baseball cards, they based on baseball cards, and then the stats on the back is a domestic violence issue, and then on the back is places where you could find, and telephone numbers where you could find safe houses. And
did he
more than once
oh
people
sorry.
came in with that card who were protecting their families with my face on
Gosh, Kevin.
it. But it was a great thing to be able to again work out into that, assist people in looking at the world, finding refuge or being whatever. And it's still, that's the inspiring thing to me. There's so many wonderful people doing. There's a woman, Sally Hindman, who does an art program in the Bay Area that rests tiny houses. She builds tiny, been doing it for years,
Oh,
and
yeah.
takes kids who've been abandoned or wandering out in the world and finds them places. And they build little villages that are decorated with these small houses and art related things. And it's an amazing amount of work, frankly. So that's this kind of stuff that still inspires me. My hippie heart.
Keith Bodie once told me a long time ago that when you're stuck and you're making bad artwork, to just keep making it because just keep going and eventually it'll get good again.
Yeah.
And that stays with me in rough
Just
moments.
true. It's true, I think. I mean, I apply it more to songwriting now than I do
Oh, yes. Can you
when
talk?
I was in the studio. I like being in the studio, but I wasn't a studio rat. I was way more interested in getting shit done or making things happen or trying to find a place or a platform for other artists. Oh, that was the point I wanted to make. If artists ask, what do I do? I would get that question after I leave the architecture of education. The simple question is go find like-minded people and start making things happen. Volunteer at a nonprofit, or they could always use the help. Do work in a gallery, help install somebody's work, do a promotion thing with folks. Just get involved in the wheel of creativity and production and public production, if you will. I think that's the key. How did you get there? I know you made lots of work. It was really interesting.
Oh. Actually, I thought I would do after undergraduate, I thought I would do more performance stuff, but there
Hmm.
wasn't an infrastructure for it.
Yeah.
I couldn't find a place to do it. And actually really what happened is the little documentation, it was the 90s when like the camera was gigantic and we had to book time in your studio to use the toaster, that big device to edit
Yeah,
videos from
right.
like 2 to 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
And I didn't know, I didn't have taking slides was really Slide film was really hard. It was all film. So I ended up taking so much, having to learn photography, traditional photography for so long that all that energy from the performance kind of got sublimated into the photo stuff.
Yeah, I would like to throw you a compliment because I've seen your work from the white girl singing along to the radio videotape driving down
Oh,
and
yes.
work that we talked about Lavender Girl and Thinking
Yeah.
Girl's Pink. I know she's gonna shy here away from,
Oh,
but
boy.
all that was rather extraordinary work because there was this thing, a really important thing is that there are people who are unteachable. They just did that. They were wired to do this. You were wired to do what you do. And it took many, many levels. I remember going to LA and see two shows that you had going on, and one was some books and photographs, and the other ones were photographs, I think. And I was like stunned by the production all along the way. Shauna Moulton's another one.
Amazing. Shauna's amazing.
She's was just wired. NATO was wired that way. I mean, all these folks. I took down some names of people. I mean, oh my God, they got a whole page of names of people who
I'll
Pat
put that in
Kite.
the notes.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Thank anyone,
There's a,
honor
no-
anyone.
a lot, I mean, there was just amazing. I mean, the Patch Kites was just incredible. And his work on people was just, his effect on people's work. It was extremely powerful stuff, you know. NATO's Aaron Gatch's work is amazing to me. Just always really. I mean, I didn't have to say anything. You guys just went and did it, and that's a remarkable thing to watch happen. Shauna just started doing performances in 120 all by herself, with no audience, documenting and filming. And there was a moment where we started using video projectors.
Ooh, after my
Yeah,
time.
that was, yeah, that made things very grandiose, frankly. One of Shauna's early pieces used a light table I had and a table I had, and then she had overhead projector where she was picking gummy worms out of naked woman's or indivisible woman's body, It was
Oh,
very oddly looking thing, but it was beautiful. And, her work continues to explore this vast array of women's issues in a very interesting way. Marissa John, same thing.
oh yeah, Marissa. I did an interview with her.
Oh yeah, good.
She's
I
also
saw her in New York when I went to see Shauna.
she also has very loving things to say
Uh,
or appreciative things.
I mean, sometimes I have to say this, and I hope you don't. But sometimes I don't know what to think. I didn't. Wow, really? One of those things with Marissa was like she did this whole thing called rat tat tat.
I remember that. Like I
Yeah,
saw that
right.
in your office.
There was like, why? She did them on bridges. She did one in the corner of my office. I mean, it
They were
was,
like light up the like reflective material.
yes, exactly.
And
Yeah.
I thought it was like a really nice minimalist language poem.
Yeah.
She said she put one near the train tracks in Berkeley, so it would the rat-a-tat-tat would happen with
Yes,
the
rat
train
tat.
going by.
I remember this, right? And now her educational experiences are just profound. I mean, what she's doing with students is unbelievable. And she's a remarkable art illustrator. She showed me some drawings years ago when she was at Berkeley. Just incredible stuff. She was very good. And I just had no idea. I don't have anything to say. You start living your life and going after it, because that's the best part. And it's not easy, you know. I mean, I never made any money doing what I did in sculpture. It's okay. I like it, but it's gonna fall over. Never mind. It was okay. So the production part, that's kind of, I liked.
Well, sculpture is the has the most storage and maintenance
Oh God.
issues. the toughest one for
It
storage.
is. Yeah, I spent $150,000 storing crap for
Oof.
10 years.
Oof.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And then now it's in a bin recycled. That's unfortunate. There's a few pieces I've held on to. Um, I guess that,
Neil John Ruperto. Sorry, there's another one. Oh, I meant to say.
oh, Miljon was amazing. Jay Chung, I think Jay Chung. There was so many wonderful I mean, Nouveau was an incredible group of. That was like
Oh, that was
a
after
group
my
of people.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, they did amazing. Even they did a thing on the web as a performance piece, and guys who were in technology went over and looked at it. And it was sort of like, oh, this is the best, man. It's the best thing in the world. That Nouveau was just remarkable. Amanda Hendricks was extraordinary.
Oh, Amanda Hendricks. Yes.
Yeah, she did
Karen
performances.
Schaupeter. Is she in your class?
Who?
Karen Schaupeter.
Yeah, yeah. She did
She
this thing
runs
on
a
pigeons. That was one of the most amazing things I ever saw in videotape. It was, oh God. I mean, the other thing I think was that I offered places to people could work. Like I had an office. Well, what am I going to do in an office? So I just turned it into a lab for people to create work at any time of the day. I mean, this student behavior doesn't stop at the last class at 6. It goes all night. There was many times when the tapes would come in, they just finished it.
yeah, all night sessions in your
Yeah, all night sessions,
yeah.
burning up the oil, going at it. I remember one time, and we're always at odds with anthropology.
Oh gosh, I remember having a key to your
Yeah,
held on
right.
to a key to your studio for like decades for sentimental value.
Well, now it's turned into this dysfunctional bio lab for anthropology. I have no idea. Yeah, we were always at odds with anthropology.
Oh yeah.
These past few, couple weeks, thinking about all of this it's been a long time, and I'm at the age now at 75. Like somebody said, what is your goal? I go, I don't know. I'm in a state of bewilderment just because out there exists all these wonderful things that go on. And this was that experience for many, many years. And never regretted a minute of it until the little bird said, it's time to close the door. And that was fine with me. I had a daughter to work with, and the culture shifts. So in some ways, it's sort of like I did the best thing I could do. Ever be, was a movie called The Fury. One of the guys in this tank go, "Best job I ever had," and it's true. I didn't even think of it as a job.
It was a really magical time, and it like set a lot of people I know on their life path. And those who didn't go into the arts, as you mentioned on the phone, it sounds like it had profound effects on people, even if they
Oh
didn't
yeah.
pursue art. But a lot of people pursued art in one way or another.
I'm a little bit amazed. I'm not amazed because, it's the quality of the individuals. It's the quality of the students. I learned that I was substituted before I taught there for Christine Tamblyn, who initially, and I never applied for a job at Berkeley. I was suggested to do it. Christine Tamblyn, remarkable artist in the 80s and 90s, sadly passed away. Um, she recommended, and I went in and did a performance piece called "How Many Times Have I Told You I Love You?" And I won't go into the details, but it was like this performance work. And during the response period back after the piece, all of a sudden I realized, don't say anything. The worst thing you can do is get caught, because these were the smartest people I had ever encountered. And I'm sitting wide-eyed going, oh my God, I don't know about capitalism and the white culture. It was like this remarkable set of responses. And so, college does provide that. People are eager to learn, and that's the only thing you can do is foster that. You have to listen. That's it. Listen and try to promote it.
I was thinking lately that your class, like the words Kevin's class became, got that shortened, like different cadence when you say Kevin's class. Kevin's class. Oh yeah, I talked to him. I wasn't in Kevin's class. Kevin's class. It was no longer, it had like became like a byword for community.
What I learned from everybody was that was important. If you're not learning from who you're working with, you're not doing it right, I think. You
Like
know,
you're learning from the students while you're teaching.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I really learned a lot about individuals. People were willing to say things and address things that were at times very difficult thing. They really wanted to do it. Some of them, maybe I should take a psychology class here a little bit to try to help foster, my understanding of it. But patience and listening and giving good, hopefully once in a while giving good advice. Don't try this. Don't. There was a few people that I won't go into names, but there was one student who was a grad student, a great guy, fabulous guy who would go into personas in his performances and not come out of them for a week. It's sort of like you got to stop. You're
Yeah.
you're too invested in this, and
Mm.
so, right, you got to come up and breathe a little bit. So yeah, I mean it was a great pleasure, and I'm amazed that we still talk.
I mean, the caring, supportive environment that you created really kept brought out the best in a lot of people's work, and they worked really hard because, like, I just felt like there was one project I disappointed you, and I
Mm.
was so crushed, and I like worked so hard to like come back and do it again to figure it out. It's like just that small disappointment was like, oh no.
Yeah, God, I'm glad I didn't. I know, God, I don't know that. I just never really realized that that could happen.
For me, it was an effective teaching style, which I haven't encountered since.
Yeah, I mean, I was really important because when I went to graduate school at Berkeley, and there was this crew of men, which I just, I'm not here to be one of your boys. I'm not here to be this macho sculptor character. So there were two or three seminars I just walked out of saying, I don't care what you think. And I connected with a really remarkable performance artist. It was, I can't remember right now, a long time ago, but I learned a lot more that way. I mean, this whole macho sculptor thing was not really the way for me to approach anything. I feel like, yeah, getting beat up is not a way to learn.
Hmm. You were also had standards. I'll just say, like, I didn't come from an art background, just kind of sideways jumped into it. And you said to me once seriously, like, you should look at more art. And I was like, oof, I point taken and cut right to the bone. But it was helpful, constructive. Yeah, thank you.
I think it's there was a guy I met and almost had a project with at Berkeley, and I won't go into why it didn't happen other than Berkeley was really kind of foolish. I worked with this guy I met at a symposium, William Pope.L.
Oh, William Pope.L, yes.
Yeah, remarkable artist.
Yes.
Just and I met him at the symposium, and of all places, Penn State University,
Mm.
at a 3-day event where he talked and we got to chat, and he said something. You learn in nuggets. Beverly Pepper said this: "Artist mind is archival. You're stuffing stuff in your head all the time, remembering this and that." And these little nuggets are really important. And Pope.L said, when I started teaching, I had to learn the scholarship of what I'm teaching. In other words, I need to know more about the art world. I need to know more about what's going on. So it's really important I mean, I was so curious. I remember as a young student going, to galleries and fawning over Henry Moore's and David Smith's sculptures. I mean, that's how old that was. and also a number of Lee Bontekoe, who's just like whose work was just amazing to me. She was a 60s artist. So looking at all that work was like really helpful for me.
Mm.
Same thing with going to performances. It was important to go look at the work. And now they're looking at your work.
Oh man, I'm still weak on art history. People think it's a charming affect or an affectation. I think I'm pretending I nod a lot. Mm.
Yeah, I did too. I did too. Because I sort of, I don't know. I remember when I would do the introductory class. So there was 3 days where you would just kind of, class would change. And so I loaded up with 300 slides, starting with cave art and skipped across the waves of of culture to, Matthew Barney, and it was just a great way. And it was also a good way that people go, I'm not going to sit in this classroom. What the hell's going on here? It
Weeding
was,
out the weak one.
yeah. I mean, in some degree, I didn't intentionally want to weed anybody out. It was interesting that some people just like, there were a couple of people who did an autobiographical piece, and peers would review it and talk about it, and they just couldn't take that kind of response, and they said, "I'm sorry, I have to leave. I'm dropping
Oh,
out." And
critique.
yeah, it's like, yeah, it's important. Plus I wanted to have an effective group, so it was really, I didn't want to pick anybody out, but there was people I wish did take the class, and but it was, in the end, it all worked out. Everybody went for it.
Yeah, I've seen out in the world, people seem to freak out if they get like a bunch of public feedback from a chorus and a bunch of different voices that don't all agree. And it's so wild because it's like the basic unit of taking an art class.
Yeah, true. I mean, culturally now, there's this odd thing in, maybe I've participated in some, is like I like to challenge and I look at ideas. There's some that are obviously like not helpful, but I don't know. I think we're in a moment of redefining things. People are looking at how to simmer down. In music, it's really important. It's really interesting because there's this huge movement towards old time music. I don't think anybody's trying to live retrally, but I think they're trying to bring a smaller voice to it, so it's more intimate with them. And that's important. I mean, I have that interest when I play.
Yeah, so
So
we didn't talk about the fact that you are actively performing on a regular basis.
yeah, yeah, kind of, yeah, sort of. Yeah, I recorded a CD, and it got put in for a Grammy nomination.
What?
Yeah, but there was also 10,000 other people,
Oh yeah.
and nobody or anything. And I just looked at it as like an origami boat going to England. It's not going to get there, But I was stunned, that the fact that they would review it, and that the guy who produced the record in many ways was like, wow, he was a remarkable guy anyway. And, it was a very big honor, but I don't really. Like, now I've mentioned it.
Was there anything else you want to talk about? I just couldn't want to do like an hour of praise reel.
No, I'm thankful for that. I mean, I'm thankful that there's so many voices I didn't know.
You have
Like,
no idea. You just mention your name to all these people and they light up with a bunch of things to say. And
well,
it is, I wanted to make sure you knew.
thank you, because they're all key ingredients to making the wheel turn, and all the, components to make that whole experience of nearly 17 years become as valuable to me, and amazed that so many people kind of remember.
Oh yeah, Humberto. I
But
see that you guys talk on Facebook. Humberto Leone of Opening Ceremony.
yeah, he's
And
amazing. He's like, he's God, he's going into the world. Unbelievable
oh
stuff.
yeah. Someone I know said, "Did you know that guy was going to be successful when you're in college?" I'm like, "Uh-huh."
Yeah, I got introduced, like Umberto sent me a picture of like, because there were points where we would go out and, we'd take a break between things, right? And that was last year's I smoked cigarettes. But the reason I went out and smoked cigarettes, we'd sit on that outside on that cement thing and just chat away, It was a very important part of the class, actually, to go out and just talk and hang out and make jokes or do something, and smoke cigarettes. And, it was like important. And Berto sent me a picture of me at, you know, looking all of 35, I think. God, I was like 40 something anyway. But yeah, it was amazing. I'm, oh my God. And here he was, with I've his partner at the time. They went into business together. Shirley, I think.
Carol.
Carol. Carol, sorry. So many names.
Well,
And I the praise part is I'm appreciative somehow
oh,
that's
it's not, I mean, it's not praise. It's just you had such a profound effect on
well, yeah,
huge amount of
thanks.
people and think about you all the time. And these people think about you all the time. But I just want to make sure that you knew that this is
Thanks.
happening.
Oh my God. I don't look at it as nostalgic, it's just a history marker. And it's nice to be able to see that history again and to talk about it. So I appreciate your reaching out and us having this long conversation. Hopefully I
Yeah.
get to New York and get to chat, hang out again.
Well, I got jealous. Did you go to like some Shauna Moulton show? I think I got
I went twice.
nice jealous.
It was, yeah, Shauna had this opening, but the exhibition wasn't open. They didn't finish installing it yet.
Um,
So I said, well, forget that, man. I got to go again. And it was, I'm really glad I did.
mm,
I kind of went unannounced in some ways. And, next to her work it was wonderful watching people engage her work. And then the next door over was a Joan Jonas retrospective, which was
yeah.
just incredible. Just, I saw a couple of her pieces in this 70s, early 80s Berkeley Art Museum, which was just outstanding. I think that the world, in some degree, as the art world, and I believe, and I don't know everything about the art world, but I believe it's in some ways getting smaller. It reminds me a little bit of 9/11. Artists did not know what to do. But it's important that artists voice their opinions and voice their ideas. And small clips like that are really important. Insert them, use media artists are notoriously good at using media. From what the development of film or stone carving or whatever, it was important to hear what artists had to say. And this is a perfect vehicle for that kind of thing. And and it'll expand into remarkable territories for sure. People are hungry for it, I think. They're hungry for authenticity more than anything else that smoke that blows in the world. So yeah, I mean, it was remember the old thing during the AIDS crisis is silence equals death. So I don't want to get that heavy, but I think it's like, yeah, put those mini art history, string them together into, however you see fit. And listen, other people will give you great advice as well.
Yeah. I think I learned a bunch from every interview.
Oh, I bet. I bet. I looked at a few of them and it was very good. Keith Budway's was very interesting.
Yeah. First one, thank you. Or second, but or yeah, early.
Thanks, everybody out there. Here we are.
Kitty Club.
There we go.
The cat.
Yeah, turned the cat. The reason it came a kitty club, it was because I didn't want anybody. It was a way of disenfranchising the notion of being a student. And plus 120 was like, the little cat box where all these people
The on-campus
having a great
galleries of
time
cat
playing
love.
around. And yeah, I remember when I retired, I left and I came back a year later and I saw Randy Husong, who's now retired and moved on. But anyways, I walked in, I talked to Randy for a bit, and he goes, you know, some ever since you left, it's been a lot quieter around here. Which is kind of true. I mean, here's the one thing about Stacy Switzer did this performance piece where she's outside doing this kind of Matthew Barney-esque kind of thing. It was on a block with these floodlights, and she's in this beautiful gown, and there's crickets being amplified. You know, it's part of the noise, and it kind of worked. You know, it was you could hear crickets, and the piece was over, and then the next day, anthropology was complaining there were all these crickets in their offices, and nobody knew where they came from. It was just the best, you know. I kind of like jabbing the anthropology people. So there was one more story that was really great. It was Jessica Walker, Inert Walker, I think her name was. She was very, I mean, this is a kind of important thing a little bit, you know, is that she took the class and after class, she came back and sat down and said, Kevin, I don't know, but I really want to take this class, but I have to tell you something. I'm not weird. I love my parents. And here's my paintings. That's what they're about. And there were these bizarre little paintings of mice. They were just the best. And she said, you know, I don't know what to do. And I said, well, tell us that. Don't be weird. That's the weird thing. You know, just don't be weird. You're not weird. Artists aren't weird. I learned that a long time ago. So she came in and told this story about being a prom girl in a prom dress and playing Monopoly houses around this astroturf. It was a beautiful piece. The more that she talked about each house in the neighborhood, the more weird the stories got about parents and divorces and all this sort of stuff. It was a beautiful piece. And she did this videotape where it was about people looking at her, which, you know, was still a very big thing in, you know, with women. And she was recording a video and editing it. And the soundtrack was a lot of heavy breathing and making odd sort of noises. And I got a call from the office at home, said, Kevin, anthropology is talking about is complaining that people are of your class in your class are having sex in your office. Like what? You know, it was Jessica editing, videotaping it, running the tape back and forth. It was
Yeah.
absolutely the best, you know. Anyway, okay. Other than that, thank you.
Oh
I
my,
love doing this. It was wonderful to talk with you as usual.
well, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Can't say thanks enough.
Yeah, me too.